Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something, well, potentially quite revolutionary.
Mhm.
A forthcoming work that promises a whole new perspective on human movement, on performance.
Yeah, it sounds like it's aiming high. Not just another training fad, they say, but maybe a whole new discipline.
Exactly. And it's built around this core framework: tensegrity, simplexity, synergy, and synthesis.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it all culminates in something they call transmission.
Okay. So our mission today is to kind of unpack these concepts.
Yeah, explore what they mean and, crucially, how this whole system is supposed to be, usable for anyone, any age, any level, any activity.
Right, bridging biomechanics, neuroscience, maybe even some evolutionary science.
That seems to be the idea, a very integrated approach.
Okay, let's dive in. Pillar 1, tensegrity. Sounds complex. What is it in, body terms?
Well, instead of the old bones as scaffolding idea, think of the body more like a dynamic web.
A web.
Yeah, a network of tension and compression. It's your fascia, muscles, bones, all working together, constantly adjusting. It's about interconnectedness.
So not just stacked parts, but,
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, a network. More like a suspension bridge, maybe.
That's a great analogy,
Mm.
exactly.
Mm.
And the science is starting to really back this up. You hear about fascial trains or myofascial meridians.
Right, anatomy trains and that kind of work.
Precisely. Those show how tension travels through these connected lines. Plus, there's research, I think some in the Journal of Biomechanics fairly recently, on how tendons and fascia store and release energy dynamic stiffness, they call it. Super important for movement efficiency.
Okay, so that's the concept. But how do we actually use this? How do we train tensegrity?
Good question. It's not just theory. The material suggests things like slow eccentric movements,
Okay.
isometric holes, and also spiral or rotational drills. These seem to really help balance the tension across that whole network.
So you're moving away from just isolating a muscle.
Exactly. You're thinking about nurturing the whole integrated system.
Makes sense. Okay, next pillar. Simplexity. Simple.complexity. What's that about?
Yeah, it's a neat word. It basically means using really simple inputs, simple exercises to trigger complex system-wide adaptations.
Minimal effort, maximum gain, sort of?
Kind of. It's more like minimalist input leading to sophisticated output from the body itself. Less can be more for triggering real change.
How does that work scientifically? Simple drills causing big changes.
It ties into motor learning, especially this idea of constraints-led training. You might have heard of that.
Yeah, using limitations to force adaptation.
Exactly. By setting up specific movement challenges, you sort of nudge the nervous system to figure out better, more efficient ways to move. It self-organizes.
Interesting. Can you give an example, one of these simple drills?
Sure. Think about a cross-lateral lunge, maybe reaching across the body at the same time.
Okay, I can picture that. Seems basic enough.
Right, but think what it's doing. It challenges your balance. That's proprioception.
Your body awareness.
Exactly. It loads the spiral lines of fascia, training that elastic recoil. And because it's cross-lateral, opposite arm and leg, it integrates both sides of the brain and body. Cognitive motor stuff.
Wow. Okay, so one simple move hits a lot of systems.
That's the beauty of simplexity, as they present it. Efficiency and adaptation.
Right. So we got the structure, tensegrity, and the smart training method, simplexity. Now, synergy, what does that add?
Synergy is about all those parts, muscles, fascia, nerves, starting to work together better, cooperating more effectively. It's about the emergence of smooth, whole-body coordination.
Like an orchestra where all the instruments finally click.
Perfect analogy, yeah. And neuroscience supports this too. Muscle synergies, the brain often activates groups of muscles, these modules, rather than just one at a time.
I've heard about that in rehab contexts too, like getting the glutes and core firing together.
Absolutely. That coordinated action glutes, core, lats, working together during gait, for example, that's synergy in action. It's crucial for effective, safe movement.
So how do we train for that, for better synergy?
The material suggests rhythmic, often spiral-type sequences, things that force different body parts to coordinate in time and space.
Like?
Well, they mentioned maybe using diagonal lunges with rhythmic pulses to train the kind of kinetic chain you'd use in, say, a tennis serve. It forces that synergistic firing pattern.
Okay, I'm starting to see the layers build up here. Tensegrity, simplexity, synergy. Which brings us to synthesis. What happens now?
Synthesis is where it all, synthesizes. It comes together. Those first three pillars merge into autonomous skill. Movement becomes automatic, fluid, efficient. Effortless, almost.
So this is where practice makes perfect, going from thinking about it to just doing it.
Exactly that. It's about neuroplasticity, the brain physically changing through practice. Things like myelination, speeding up nerve signals for those patterns. It becomes ingrained.
Dynamic systems theory fits in here too.
Yeah, that theory describes how, under the right conditions or constraints, the body just sort of clicks into the most effective movement pattern available to it. It settles into an optimal state.
Can you give a training example of synthesis? How it looks?
Sure. The material describes maybe progressing a drill. You might start with an isometric hold in a certain position.
Okay, building control.
Right. Then move to doing just a partial range of motion, building strength through that pattern. And finally, you execute the full explosive movement.
So you're layering control, strength, and then speed or fluidity.
Exactly. You're synthesizing all those qualities into one seamless skill.
Got it. And the end point, the big goal of all this is transmission. What's that final piece?
Transmission is basically the payoff. It's the body's ability to channel force effectively.
Yeah.
Without energy leaks, like that perfectly struck golf swing transferring power smoothly from the ground up.
Tuned system.
A perfectly tuned tensegrity structure. Yeah, that's the idea. Allowing force to transmit cleanly through the system.
And is there science on this efficient force transfer?
Oh, yeah. There's fascinating research showing how much energy our fascia can store and return, like elastic bands. It can cut the metabolic cost of running significantly.
Wow. So it makes you more efficient.
More efficient and likely more resilient, too. If force transmits well, it also disperses well, which could reduce injury risk.
So it's not just about raw power, but about directing it smartly.
Precisely. Training this involves minimizing wasted motion, making movements smooth and powerful, turning those synthesized skills into effortless-looking power.
Okay, this whole tensegrity, simplexity, synergy, synthesis, transmission framework, they're calling it a missing discipline. Why a missing? What's it different from?
Well, the argument presented is that current approaches can be a bit fragmented. Bodybuilding focuses on muscle size.
Isolation, yeah.
Powerlifting on max strength in specific lifts, often linear. Functional training, well, sometimes gets a bit gimmicky, maybe lacking a deep principle. And rehab can be too focused on just one weak link.
So this aims to be more holistic.
Exactly. It tries to unify these things under biological first principles. Tensegrity is the structure, simplexity is the strategy, synergy is the coordination, synthesis is achieving mastery.
And transmission is the result. Efficient movement.
Right. A more biologically grounded approach, potentially.
And you mentioned science supports these pillars. It's not just a cool theory.
No, it seems well-grounded. Research on fascia and tendons backs the tensegrity and transmission ideas. Complex system science supports simplexity, how complex patterns emerge from simple rules.
And then neuroscience.
Yeah, neuromechanics shows how things like cross-lateral drills really do enhance that brain-body connection, which ties into synergy and synthesis. So the pieces seem to be rooted in current science.
So looking ahead, what's the potential impact of thinking this way?
It could be quite significant if it catches on. For rehab, maybe moving beyond just fixing the broken part to improving the whole system's function.
Okay.
For sports, maybe a more adaptable, biologically informed way to train performance, less rigid than some old models.
And for just everyday life, longevity.
Yeah, potentially a great toolkit for maintaining that natural tensegrity and movement quality as we age, helping us stay resilient and capable.
So it really does position itself as more than just exercises. It's a different way of thinking about the body and motion.
That's the core message, I think. A framework grounded in science, but designed for really broad use, anyone, any age, any goal, tapping into the body's own intelligence.
It makes you think, doesn't it? As you've been listening, maybe you're already connecting these ideas, tensegrity, simplexity, synergy, synthesis, transmission to your own movement or how you train. This idea of it being a manifesto for human movement, as the source puts it, it feels ambitious, but maybe necessary. It definitely gives you something to consider about your own body and how it all works together. How could these principles apply to you?